It was the spring of 1944, a season of relentless drizzle and biting chill that seemed to seep into the bones of Europe itself, as if the continent were weeping for the rivers of blood already spilled. Normandy lay in tense anticipation of the storm to come, Operation Overlord, but far to the east, in the shadowed underbelly of occupied Paris, a clandestine mission was brewing under the codename Phantom. It was an audacious gamble, a crack team of American Rangers and British Commandos tasked with infiltrating the Abwehr headquarters on Rue de Rivoli, stealing blueprints for the Nazis' new V2 wonder weapons, and smuggling them out to the French resistance for relay to London. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Those rockets threatened to turn the tide of the air war, raining death on Allied cities from afar. Everything hinged on precision, luck, and the unyielding grit of men who'd stared down death too many times to flinch. Enter Sergeant Jack "Crocodile" Murphy, a United States Marine who'd washed up in this European theater like driftwood from a Pacific typhoon. At 32, Jack was no poster boy hero from the recruitment drives. He stood a wiry 5'9", his face a road map of scars from Guadalcanal, jagged lines from shrapnel and bayonets that twisted his grin to something feral, earning him the nickname Crocodile back in 42. Snaps shut and doesn't let go, his squad mates used to say. Jack had enlisted in 39, a Brooklyn Irish kid with a chip on his shoulder the size of the Verrazano Bridge, fleeing a dead-end job in the shipyards, and a father who drank more than he worked. The Corps had forged him into a jack of all trades. He could jury-rig a tank from scrap metal, rig a bridge to blow with dental floss, and C4, or croon an old Irish ballad around a foxhole fire to keep the ghosts at bay. He'd earned his stripes in the Solomon Islands, where the jungle heat turned men into animals and the Japs into phantoms. One night on Tarawa, he dragged 3 pinned-down Marines out of a coral crater under machine gun fire, using nothing but a length of vine and a captured Nambu pistol. Brass called it heroism, Jack called it survival. By 44, with the Pacific grinding slower, they'd shipped him to England for special duties. That's when Captain Elias Harris, a steely-eyed ranger from Boston with a Harvard drawl and a perpetual scowl, tapped him for Phantom. One of Harris's men had shattered his ankle on a night jump in the Cotswolds' bad luck. Simple as that. "You're no spook, Croc." Harris had growled over lukewarm tea in a damp SOE safe house near Dover. "But if the Krauts smell us, your Yankee ingenuity might just keep us breathing. We're not here to die pretty. We're here to gut the Reich where it hurts." The insertion was textbook peril. On the moonless night of May 15th, they slipped off a blacked-out submarine off the Brittany coast, paddling rubber dinghies through surf that clawed like demon hands. Jack, clad in a sodden wool sweater and oilskins, gripped the oar until his knuckles whitened, the salt spray mixing with the tang of fear in his throat. 2 days of hellish overland trek followed, through hedgerows thick as tank traps, across peat bogs that sucked at their boots like quicksand, always a hair's breadth from Wehrmacht patrols. Jack's pack chafed his shoulders raw, loaded with a suppressed Thompson submachine gun, demo charges, and a battered harmonica for the quiet moments. They spoke in whispers, hand signals their only chatter, Harris pointing, a wiry Brit named Tommy Ellis nodding, and the Russian émigré Ivan Petrov, a hulking Cossack with eyes like chipped flint, bringing up the rear. By the third dawn, they melted into Paris like ghosts into fog. The City of Light was a husk under the swastika. Curfews choked the streets after dusk, collaborators slunk in the shadows, and the Eiffel Tower loomed like a skeletal finger accusing the sky. Their bolt hole was the cellar of a bombed-out boulangerie on the fringes of Montmartre, its air thick with the ghosts of fresh baguettes and mildew. The resistance fierce Maquisards with hollow cheeks and fire in their bellies slid them false papers through a loose brick. Jack became Jean Leclerc, a pipefitter from Lyon with a limp and a penchant for cheap wine. Madame Duval, the baker's widow who ran the cell, pressed a loaf of ersatz bread into his hands. "Eat, mon ami," she murmured, her voice a rasp from too many cigarettes. The Boches have ears everywhere, and God watches the brave. The op kicked off at first light on the fourth day, a gray smear bleeding into the Seine. Harris and 3 Rangers, dressed as Flemish couriers with forged manifests, slipped into the Abwehr building under the guise of delivering Gestapo dispatches. Jack, Ivan, and Tommy held the overwatch from the attic of a derelict dressmaker's shop across the alley, a nest of dust motes and pigeon droppings, with a Thompson trained on the rear fire escape. The plan was surgical. In and out in 20 minutes. Blueprints tucked into a hollowed-out briefcase. Exfil via sewer grate to a resistant safe house near the Louvre. Jack chain-smoked Gauloises stolen from a dead Fritz and scanned the street through a cracked pane. Like waiting for the tide to turn, he muttered to Ivan, who grunted and sharpened his fair-bare knife on a whetstone. Trouble hit at noon, sharp as a bayonet twist. The radio crackled to life in Harris's clipped whisper. Containment breach. Blueprints secured, but they've locked the exits. Gestapo rolling in sirens inbound. Murphy, cover the extraction. Ivan, demo the bridge if we bolt east. Jack's gut knotted like manila rope. He cracked the window a sliver and peered down. The alley swarmed with black-shirted SS, Mausers slung, Dobermans straining at leashes. Their Obersturmführer, a bull-necked Prussian named Klaus von Eberhardt, with a dueling scar and a monocle glinting like ice, barked orders into a bullhorn. Raus! Die Partisanen sind Umsingelt. Surrender or burn. Harris's team burst from the back door in a hail of lead suppressed bursts, cracking the air, ricocheting off cobblestones. One Ranger, young Eddie Klein from Philly, took a round in the thigh and crumpled, his cry swallowed by the din. Tommy clipped a pursuing Fritz from the rooftop, but ammo was burning fast. The blueprints yellowed sheets of schematics detailing the V2's gyroscopic guidance and liquid fuel horrors were clamped in Harris's fist inside that battered case. Lose them, and Phantom crumbled. The Allies would bleed months countering a weapon that could level London block by block. Jack's mind raced, a engine revving in overdrive. Gestapo ain't jungle rats. They hate heights, hate mess. But we need chaos, not corpses. He swept the attic, crates of moth-eaten bolts of silk, rusted plumbing scraps, a tangle of cobwebs thick as smoke. And there, in the corner like a relic from another war, sat an antique Singer sewing machine, its treadle foot pedal warped from disuse, needle arm bent but intact. Beside it, a spool of baling wire from the rafters, a tin of machine oil pilfered from the bakery's generator, and a stack of week-old Le Monde papers, inked with Vichy propaganda and reeking of damp newsprint. Eureka, you sons of bitches, Jack breathed, a feral smile cracking his lips. He waved Ivan over. Petrov, grab the demo packs, light charge only, enough for a pop. Oil the roof slates, make it slick as a whore's promise. Tommy, cover the ladder. I'm cooking up a distraction that'll have these Nazis dancing the can-can. Ivan's bushy brows arched, but he nodded trust, forged in foxholes and slithered out the hatch, vanishing like a bear into the eaves. Jack tore the papers into tight fuses, twisting them rope-like and soaking the ends in oil until they glistened black. The Singer yielded its guts in under 2 minutes. He pried off the faceplate with a crowbar shard, exposing the flywheel and tension springs. From the wire, he fashioned a crude tripline, looping it to a salvaged bicycle wheel from the alley junk below, propped against the pedal arm to spin on tension. The bent needle he wedged into the wheel's rim filed sharp against the stone sill, ready to spark flint on steel when released. It wasn't a bomb. It was Theater Jack's Pacific improv twisted for European streets. Back in '43, on Bougainville, I fooled a Jap sentry with a coconut rigged to whistle like a Yank patrol. These pricks, they'll shit bricks at a sparkler. He bound the paper fuses to a half stick of dynamite, minimal boom, maximum blaze, and lashed the whole contraption to a roof tile. A quick prayer to Street Patrick, a flick of his Zippo, and the fuse hissed to life, slow burning like a fuse on a cartoon anvil. Down below, the noose tightened. Von Eberhardt's bullhorn blared again. Fear fray! No quarter for saboteurs! SS boots pounded the pavement, pinning Harris's crew behind a row of rain barrels that splintered under Mauser fire. Klein groaned, blood pooling, as Harris dragged him toward the alley mouth. Bullets chipped brick inches from Jack's perch, one whined past his ear, hot as a kiss from hell. Now or never, he snarled into the radio. Harris, on my mark, flank left. He heaved the package over the eave. It arced graceful through the air, trailing smoke, and thudded into a heap of refuse sacks at the Gestapo's flank, right under von Eberhardt's polished jackboots. The pop was underwhelming, a sharp crack like a champagne cork, but the fire was poetry. Oil-soaked rags ignited in a whoosh, blooming into a greedy maw that leaped from sack to sack, licking up the SS greatcoats like a starving beast. The papers flared bright, embers dancing on the wind to catch a Doberman's fur, sending the beast into a frenzy of yelps and snaps. Von Eberhardt slipped on the slick oil spill, his monocle flying as he crashed ass first into a puddle, bellowing, Verdammte Saboteure, die Judenführer löschen sie es. Chaos erupted. Stormtroopers flailed with their coats, smothering flames that leaped to collars and cuffs. Dogs tangled leashes around legs, toppling men like dominoes. The bullhorn, kicked into the blaze, wailed a feedback screech that drowned out commands. One Fritz, panic-blind, fired wildly into the air, his burst stitching harmless across the rooftops. 5 minutes. A gift from the devil himself. Go! Go! Jack roared into the mic, bolting down the creaking ladder 2 rungs at a time. He hit the alley at a sprint, scooping Klein over one shoulder, the kid light as a sack of flour, whimpering curses. Bullets chased them, but the fire held the line. SS men prioritized the inferno over pursuit, their shouts a babble of fury and fear. Harris, case clutched like a holy relic, rendezvoused at the mouth. Croc, you mad bastard, what the hell was that? Jack grinned through the burn in his lungs. Sewing lesson cap, Fritz just learned to hate haute couture. They piled into the resistance ride, a battered Indian motorcycle, with sidecar engine, coughing like an old drunk but game as hell. Jack gunned it, the beast roaring to life amid a spray of gravel. Petrov and Ellis laid suppressing fire from the shadows, clips emptying in precise bursts that dropped 2 tailing pursuers. The bike tore through Montmartre's labyrinth, fishtailing past horse carts and startled vendors, dodging Vichy gendarmes who blinked in confusion. Parisians, sensing the scent of rebellion, joined the fray. Unbidden, a flower seller tipped her cart into the road, blocking a pursuing Opel. An old man with a cane accidentally felled a street sign into another patrol's path. The City of Light fought back in whispers and wrecks. At the Seine's bend, under the Pont Neuf's arches, salvation waited. A flat-bottomed barge disguised as a fisherman's punt, its hull laden with crates of shad that hid Tommy guns and morphine syrettes. Mademoiselle Claude, the resistance courier, a lithe brunette with eyes like storm clouds and a Mauser tucked in her garter, waved them aboard. She took the case with a nod, her fingers brushing Jack's. You fight like demons, Americaine. But Paris remembers her saviors. Jack Klein, slung across his lap, managed a wink. If I make it back after this circus, mademoiselle, dinner at Maxim's, I'll even wear a tie. The exfil was a gauntlet of nerves, pulling down river under camouflage nets, hearts hammering at every patrol boat's hum. By dusk, a Royal Navy corvette scooped them from the estuary, churning back to Portsmouth amid U-boat whispers. Phantom succeeded beyond dreams. The blueprints reached Churchill's war room within days, accelerating RAF strikes on Peenemünde that crippled the V2 program at its cradle. Hundreds of Londoners slept sounder because of it. Thousands more lived. Jack got no parade, no Silver Star. The shadows of SOE ops swallowed glory whole. Back in the Corps barracks at Aldershot, yarns spun around the poker table. Croc saved Paris with a goddamn singer. He'd shrug, puff his pipe, and stare at the channel's gray churn. Ingenuity ain't magic, lads. It's oil and spite when the world's on fire. But alone, in the small hours, ghosts visited. Guadalcanal's palms, Tarawa's screams, and now Paris's sirens. He'd finger a locket around his neck, his ma's, with a faded photo of her in Ellis Island finery, and wonder at the cost. War's end came a year later. VE Day, a roar of joy he heard from a hospital bed in Devon, mending a shrapnel graze from the bulge. He cabled the resistance contacts, but the reply was a knife. Claude, betrayed by a Vichy rat, shipped to Auschwitz. Gas in the ovens, 2 weeks shy of liberation. Jack never returned to Paris, not for dinner, not for closure. He shipped back to the States, mustered out to a veteran's pension and a job welding, Liberty ships in the yards he'd fled. Nights, he'd walk the Brooklyn docks, harmonica wailing Danny Boy into the fog, the locket heavy as regret. In the end, ingenuity saved the op, bent history's arc, but it couldn't stitch the frayed threads of lives lost. Jack Murphy, the crocodile, snapped shut on his secrets and swam on, scarred, unbowed, a quiet legend in a world that moved too fast to remember.